Hello everyone, and welcome back. Hope you're ready for some more reading because I've got my book. So, shall we? Hope you remember where we were, because as I always say, well, sometimes say, I'm not going back. What is reality therapy? Early in this chapter, I say that reality is our most important treatment tool. I've proceeded to discuss a number of realities, in concluding this chapter, I wish to compare briefly transactional analysis with reality therapy, developed by Dr. William Glasser. Glasser holds that man's basic problem is moral, in that being responsible is the requirement for mental health. I believe both approaches, transactional analysis and reality therapy, can be thought of as products of a new breakthrough in psychiatry born of the dissatisfaction with the effectiveness and unreality of those types of psychiatry and clinical psychology, which in effect discuss morality from the focus of treatment. Both transactional analysis and reality therapy hold that people are responsible for their behaviour. There is an essential difference, however. I disagree with Glasser in his general disdain of the significance of the past in understanding behaviour in the present. I do not believe in the game of archaeology or digging up the past. Neither do I believe we can totally ignore the past. I have no opinion on this at the moment, by the way, people, just so you know. To me, the man who ignores his past is like the one who stands in the rain, arguing about its wetness while becoming drenched. Telling a patient he must be responsible is nowhere near the same thing as his becoming responsible. Transactional analysis is also a reality therapy, but it provides answers I do not believe Glasser has provided. What is wrong for people, for instance, who cannot perceive reality or whose perception is distorted or contaminated? What is the answer to those who know what they must do but continually fail to do it? Glasser states, we do not concern ourselves with unconscious mental processes. We do not get involved with the patient's history because we can neither change what happened to him or accept the fact that he is limited by his past. It is true we cannot change the past, yet the past invariably insinuates itself into our present life through the parent and the child. And unless we understand why this happens and admit that it does, we do not have an emancipated adult by which we can become the responsible persons Glasser admonishes us to be. We have to understand our parent, adult, child before we can turn the past. Really? Really, Ollie? It's just a guy with looking at his phone, walking past. Really? Come on. Settle down, mate. Come on. Come back. Ollie, get your backside here. Come on. No. Just so you know, I am actually talking to a dog, not myself. Right. Shall we begin before we was interrupted? Where was I? Let's have a look. We're at the past. Well, I'm just going to start the sentence because I think we was halfway through it. Right, let's get that. Just there. Right. Yet the past invariably insinuates itself into our present life through the parent and the child. Unless we understand why this happens and admit that it does, we do not have an emancipated adult by which we can become the responsible person Glasser admonishes us to be. We have to understand our parent, adult, child before we can turn off the past. When a therapist tells us we must, this is parent. We choose to do so ourselves because we understand how we are put together, this is adult. The same power of our decision is totally dependent upon whether the decision is parent or adult. Another reservation I have about reality therapy is that it does not have a special language with which to report what happened. Glasser states, the ability of the therapist to get involved is the major skill of doing reality therapy, but it is most difficult to describe. How does one put into the words the building of a strong emotional relationship quickly between two relative strangers? In transactional analysis, we have these words. The patient begins by interfacing his child and viewing the therapist as a parent. In the initial hour, parent, adult, and child are defined, and these words are then used to define the contract or mutual expectations from treatment. The therapist is there to teach and the patient is there to learn. The contract is adult-adult. If the patient is asked what happened, he can tell what happened. He has learned to identify his own parent, adult, and child. He has learned to analyse his transactions. He has acquired a tool to free up and strengthen his adult, and only this adult can be responsible. I agree wholeheartedly with Glass's central focus of responsibility, just as I agree with the idea of the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule. The reality that concerns me, however, is why these admonitions do not routinely produce responsible persons. Simply restate them in new ways is not going to do the job. We cannot produce responsible persons until we help them recover to the I'm not okay, you're okay position, which underlies the complicated and destructive games they play. Once we understand positions and games, freedom of response begins to emerge as a real possibility. As long as people are bound by the past, they are not free to respond to the needs and aspirations of others in the present. To say that we are free, says Will Durant, is merely to mean that we know what we are doing. And that is the end of the chapter. Right then. Out with the old chapter, in with the new chapter. Chapter 13. Social implications of parent, adult, child. Does our understanding of why individuals act as they do throw any light on why groups of people such as nations act as they do? It is important that we ask this question because if it is not asked and answered soon, there may be little point in being concerned about individuals. Do you really think a human being is a rational being? Senator William Fulbright asked at a Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing. In Vietnam, he continued, in order to give an election to a people that never had an election, we are willing to kill thousands of them. This seems to me irrational. Since collective as well as personal modes of behaviour are transmitted from one generation to another through the parent, it is important for a nation to be as scrupulously critical of its existing institutions and procedures as it is for an individual. The United States affords great freedom for this kind of critical examination, and yet there is a question of how effectively we exercise this freedom. We defend our national or collective parent sometimes rather blindly and seem to forget that other nations do the same thing. We call our defence patriotism and their defence enslavement. To some extent all nations live behind a curtain, perhaps it is the same curtain. The California Superintendent of Schools Max Rafferty defines good citizenship in this particular way. The good citizen stands in relation to his country as the good son to his mother. He obeys her because she is his elder, because she conjoins with herself the vision of many, and because he owes to her his begetting and his nurturing. He honours her above all others, placing her in a special niche within his secret heart, in front of which the candles of respect and admiration are forever kept alight. He defends her against all enemies and counts his life well lost in her behalf. Above all else, he loves her deeply and without display, knowing that although he shares that privilege with others, the nature of his own affection is unique and personal, rising from the deepest wellsprings of his being and returning kind. This is the good citizen. While this kind prevails, so also flourishes the great republic. The only thoughtful response to such a pronouncement is, that depends. Whether we obey, honour and defend our mother, our parent or our natural parent depends on what this parent really is. It may be that because we feel we must believe in an idea, we cannot see what the idea is. This is precisely the same kind of devotion which makes the people of India allow the rats to eat 20% of their inadequate food supply, or makes an Indian woman bear 10 children to starve in the street because her parent will not let a male doctor install an intrauterine contraceptive device now being mass-produced in India. Okay, I'm going to stop this here for a moment. Admittedly, I don't know much about India. I'm not too sure, and I'm pretty certain the whole idea of, having 10 kids and letting them starve is one of those myths that we like to put onto people in other countries to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. But I'm just going to leave that out there, alright? And chances are if similar things do happen, there's usually a good socio-economic reason why these things actually happen. And please, Ollie, stop this. Alright, mate? There's no one out there to hurt you, okay? See? My dog. Well, he's not actually my dog. I'm looking after him for a bit. He's very protective. He barks at anything that walks by. And I mean anything. Anyway, I'm going to leave that out there, by the way, and carry on with the reading. Her parent does not object to the device, only to the male doctor. There are not enough female doctors to perform this procedure on a large scale. Okay, that's fair enough, I think. Throughout the world we see evidences of blindness, and yet we fail to see that it is a blindness common to all men. This is the same blindness as that of the little boy in chapter 2 who must believe cops are bad in the face of contrary evidence supplied by his own eyes and ears. It is the original fear of dependency in this little child which makes it imperative to accept the parent dictates for the preservation of his life. We can look at his predicament with sympathy. Perhaps if we concentrate not on the parent of our world enemies, but rather on their child with the hope of re-establishing adult communication, we can begin a sympathetic rather than a frantic appraisal of what can be done to work in the direction of a better world. Our own fears condition us, for instance, to see only the ominous parent of Red China, threatening, foreboding, angry and strong. A different point of view is expressed by Eric Severeid in his estimate of the position taken by Senator William Fulbright regarding Red China. Fulbright, as a student of history and its unpredictability, would find such fears childish. He was more inclined to interpret China's thunderous propaganda challenges as Secretary General U Thant of the United Nations does, as a natural behavioural regime that is overwhelmed with difficulties at home and feels increasingly encircled by the power of Russia and the United States. Now, this is actually something worth mentioning. The thing about China is, especially in this particular era, is that for most of China's history, it was really the most impressive nation. It called itself the Middle Kingdom for a reason, because it saw itself as the centre of the world. Until the 1800s, and things just went downhill. And downhill and downhill. And when things went downhill, other countries turned up to take bits and make things go even more downhill. And with all that in mind, considering the nation was then eventually fragmented into different regions and different warlords and did eventually get united, there was bound to be some anger. There was bound to be. Not that I'm justifying the bad things China does or did, of course. But it's just worth noting that some things are explainable with history that we tend to be ignorant of. We just tend to look at the now and, not look to the past. Because technically, yes, the past is the past, but it shapes who we are. It shapes all of us. Fulbright's mental processes are such that he would try to imagine the reaction of his own country if a Chinese army were fighting, say in Lower Mexico, and the planes were dropping bombs within 40 miles of the Rio Grande. Now, why the hell would they be doing that? The Red Scare really was something, wasn't it, people? Ironically, at the time, China was scared of the same thing. He tried to turn an international problem around, not only to understand an adversary's basic interests, but to try to imagine how the adversary feels in his heart. He thinks the world is too dangerous to do otherwise. Now, I'm liking Fulbright. I'm liking this Fulbright guy. He seems decent and he seems willing to understand people. The world needs more people like William Fulbright, who's willing to understand people to see how they got to the position they're in. In life, if you can, be a William Fulbright. Fulbright's question of whether man is rational, Dr. Jerome Frank, Professor of Psychology at Johns Hopkins University, and who was present at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing, replied, "We are rational only by fits and starts. I think we operate under a great deal of fear and emotional tension, which interferes with clear thinking. We have a right to be afraid of nuclear weapons. The little child also has a right to be afraid of a beating from a brutal father. The more relevant consideration, however, is not whether or not he has a right to be afraid, but what he can do about it. When fear dominates his life, there is no possibility for the kind of precision data processing which can make possible a precision of cure. Individual or worldwide, otherwise known as I'm okay, you're okay." This was expressed on another occasion by Senator Fulbright in a 1964 speech, interpolations and brackets. Okay, ignore that bit. The author has just added bits in brackets here, but I'm going to read it all. On to the quote. "There is an inevitable divergence attributable to the imperfections of the human mind, such as the contaminated adult. Between the world as it is, viewed by the emancipated adult, and the world as men perceive it, viewed by the parent or child or the contaminated adult. As long as our perceptions are reasonably close to objective reality, which is uncontaminated, it is possible for us to act upon our problems in a rational and appropriate manner. But when our perceptions fail to keep pace with events which are archaic, When we refuse to believe something because it displeases the parent inside of us or frightens the child inside of us, or because it is simply startlingly unfamiliar, then the gap between fact and perception becomes a chasm, and action becomes irrelevant and irrational. And that, people, is where we leave it tonight, or today, depending on what time you're reading this. I hope that each one has seen as well. Please know that we have 19 pages of this book left now, so we might be done in, say, a month or so. But anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you, people. Please take care of yourselves, okay? Bye.